What is up, everybody? It's June 22nd, 2026, and today we have a lot of big news on the Iran peace talks, and really, let's see where things are going to go. Ultimately, we see that JD Vance has been talking in Switzerland for this entire Iran deal, and he's saying that there's a lot of progress, but really, is there? Because the Iranians walked out, they snubbed JD Vance, they didn't shake his hand, they didn't want to be a part of the photo op, and on top of that, we also have Israel saying that they are not going to leave Lebanon. They are going to continue on with their entire force and everything that they're doing when it comes to the Greater Israel Project. So it continues on. The war continues on. And ultimately, we also have JD Vance saying that Iran has agreed to allow the IAEA inspectors to enter into this discussion. But Iran has denied this. So what is this about? Ultimately, I think that this is completely pretty much a facade. When we look at all of this, is this really going to be the end of the Iran war? I absolutely don't think so. I think that this is only the beginning. And if we look at the oil prices, the good part is that the oil prices are down. The good part is that the stock market is pretty much holding up at 51,000 just about. We're going to look at the markets. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit of the JD Vance and everything that's happened in Lebanon, Switzerland, and essentially what's been happening in all of these different areas of focus. Trump basically forced the Iranians to walk out of the entire negotiation because he was threatening the Iranians, and basically this was happening, saying that they wouldn't even get home if they basically chose not to appease by these deals. And then we also had Lindsey Graham, the warmonger for this entire Israel war, basically saying that here's what's going to happen if Trump doesn't want to continue this war. We're going to end up taking the Strait of Hormuz by force. And so I'm going to cover that story. And ultimately, we also have all of the Israel shills, the Mark Levins. We have all of the complete, the Mike Huckabees who are just pro-Israel, Israel first, all the way. Again, and they're not waving that American flag first. We even had Mike Huckabee say that he'd rather live in Israel. And he says it like that, right? Israel. I'd rather live in Israel. I feel more safe in Israel. I just couldn't believe that when I was in Washington, D.C., all these people were just acting crazy. So it's just crazy. Okay, and then you got Mark Levin, who's just been having an attitude all the time towards everybody, towards everything. So again, we're going to cover all of these stories. We're going to cover all of it. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. We're trying to grow this channel. Follow me on Instagram. We're actually growing rather quickly. Follow me on YouTube. Subscribe. We're trying to grow these channels so we can bring you more news. And hey, if you're interested in debating on geopolitics, you want to talk about what's happening in the war, if you are any former military, you want to talk about what's going on, you want to give your analysis on things, then contact me. Again, you can email me at eckergeopolitics@protonmail.com. And again, let's talk. Let's talk about the war. Let's talk about your take on things. As you can see in the background here, I have a little background of Switzerland. Again, this is Lebanon, Switzerland, which is where the negotiations are taking place. And so, hey, if you want to talk about these negotiations, you want to tell me why I'm wrong about my analysis, and again, all of the articles I look through, maybe I should be looking somewhere else. But ultimately, we're also going to be looking at the maritime traffic that's happening in the Strait of Hormuz today, or, really what's going on with all of this. A lot of deception happening. We have a lot of AIS tracking that's really not actually accurate. They have some different interesting things going on with false vessels in the Strait of Hormuz depicting some kind of activity going on. But really, the Strait of Hormuz appears to still be closed, and the Iranians have closed the Strait of Hormuz over this past weekend. So that's what's new. We're going to read these articles. We're going to look through some videos. We're going to see what's new on X. Again, last thing I'll say before we get into the articles, what is with X? Now you need a Premium Plus. You can't just have a premium account. You need Premium Plus to get more than 15 questions asked within a 20-hour period. And I thought that was crazy. I already have a premium account, and X is just like, no, you need a Premium Plus, or you can't ask more than 15 questions within a 20-hour period. That's absolutely crazy. Talk about a monopoly on AI and information. They're making it, an entire thing to where you got to pay money just to get information now, when information should be fully accessible. But when I looked into it, it was all about tokens and the cost of tokens, even though Elon Musk is the richest man on earth. But hey, what do you guys think about that? Again, if you want to debate me about these subjects, then email me eckergeopolitics@protonmail.com. Be sure to work with me if you want to get into real estate, BrendanEckerRealty.com. You want to build your software. You want to build your business. Again, GoldSharkMedia.com. I am actually the CEO of Goldshark Media. And so ultimately, that's all I have to say for the plugs. Let's get right into the news. That's the intro. And again, support the show. Support the information. So let's get right into it. So again, when we're looking at all of this, again, we're just really looking at all of these bigger stories today and what's happening in the news, okay? Right now we're looking at this stream. I had to recapture the screen here. There we go. So again, this is the biggest news of the day pretty much. Vance says talks with Iranian officials set good foundation for a deal to end the war. So again, he said this was a good negotiation. Negotiations are going really well, Vance says. And again, we're going to watch videos on why maybe that's not such the case. Again, we had Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who essentially accompanied JD Vance on these negotiations with Iran and with the essentially with Arghachi and these individuals who have been basically pushing forward this negotiation and trying to make this peace deal work. But again, the Iranians said, no, this isn't going to happen while Trump is threatening us. And essentially, we're also not going to do anything. This MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, is not going to move forward until Lebanon is basically sovereign again and until the Israelis basically withdraw, in which the Israelis are not willing to do. Okay, and so we have the Israelis who want us to be in this 20-year war with Iran, all of these things. So again, let's look at this article a little bit. Vice President JD Vance on Monday said his lengthy talks with senior Iranian officials in Switzerland created a good foundation for successful final deal, as they seek a permanent end to the war that the U.S. and Israel began in late February. Vance and the U.S. officials claimed progress on multiple fronts, including establishment of mechanisms to ensure the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway for global energy shipments, stays open, and to address fighting between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah militants in southern Lebanon, where a ceasefire appeared to be holding. The vice president departed in Switzerland as technical teams were negotiating, and U.S. President Donald Trump talked up efforts to keep the Strait of Hormuz open to create an oil gusher, as he stressed that the key to resolving the war was respect from Iran. As long as they respect us, I don't want to see the world fear, because that's an inappropriate word, but as long as they respect us, we're not going to have any trouble, Trump said from the Oval Office. So again, what do you think of this article? I mean, honestly, they're telling us that this Iran war is going great, the negotiations are going great, and obviously we want them to, but I just don't really see that happening, right? Vance says that Iran will allow nuclear inspections by the IAEA, and again, that's the International Atomic Energy Association. And said Tehran has not confirmed this, though. And they actually have commented on this. They basically said that there has been no such agreement. And so we're seeing a lot of smoke and mirrors. We're seeing a lot of different messages being sent, obviously, on behalf of this entire war. Okay, so 15 minutes ago, Iran-led negotiator insists Strait of Hormuz will be managed by Iran. And then 39 minutes ago, we had an update. Energy Secretary suggests oil is moving through the Strait of Hormuz at pre-Iran war levels. And again, Trump says Colombia de la Espriella called him Sunday night and thanked him for the election endorsement. 53 minutes ago, Trump suggests vandals cut a long slit in the reflective pool. Yes, we've been hearing a lot about that. That's a big story. Judge blots the use of federal database to check citizenship, saying it could wrongly purge voters. Trump suggests nobody cares about getting the dates right. Trump praises Keir Starmer, but says he was hurt by immigration and windmills. Again, that's another piece of big news today. Keir Starmer finally resigned from the Labour Party in Britain, which, if you care about European politics, and as we talk about geopolitics here and what's happening in the UK, we obviously know that the UK has been completely overrun by mass migration and all of this insanity, essentially. And these insane policies that allow all of this rape to happen and terrible things going on in the UK, essentially, because of this Labour Party, because of these things that have been enacted by these legislators and politicians and the Keir Starmers, right? We have Keir Starmer, who just put out a bill that you can't even be, if you're not 16 years old, you can't have a social media. Isn't that kind of insane? And this is called this is a freedom of speech problem. They don't want people getting access to the truth. As much as I'm upset with X making this whole, they really are creating this monopoly on AI and information and intelligence, which is horrible and it's demonic. They should be ashamed of themselves. But even beyond that, X is still the most honest free speech platform, and we have to be grateful for it because it is exposing a lot of these truths. And because of that, Keir Starmer is not happy about it. So he created this law, essentially that says if you're not 16 years old, then you can't have access to social media. Like, talk about treating, young adults like they're children, like they're 6-year-olds. And, again, this is only to protect the politicians, right? So now, hopefully, Rupert Lowe, who is basically the foregoer of this entire Restore Britain party, and again, that's kind of who I would prefer people in the UK or Britain vote for. Again, the Restore Britain party, it is the far right wing party. It is the anti-mass migration party, and that is the number one issue, most existential issue happening in the United Kingdom today. That's a fact, no debate about it. Ultimately, you are just seeing nothing but crime. You are seeing people, native Europeans, native Englishmen, native Brits, Englishmen, native people from the UK, white UK people are being completely overrun by, again, illegal immigration. And yes, it is illegal immigration because these politicians are basically enacting illegal laws, and they are going against the interests of their own people for cheap labor, and essentially because they want to maybe they're even protecting their own selves from blackmail. And that's kind of what I suspect when I look at all of this. So again, when we look at this story, again, a lot of big news. Let's take a look at this video. Ultimately, I just think it's insane. It's absolutely crazy when we see all of the information happening today. So again, let's take a check. Let's check this out. This is from the AP, Associated Press.
This was not easy. I can tell you.
So again, this is supposed to be the signing of this entire peace deal, by the way. This happened a few days ago, but this article is fresh. And so who knows? Who knows if this is real? Who knows if it's all smoke and mirrors? When I look at it, I think that this is all smoke and mirrors. Vice President JD Vance said Monday, peace talks with Iran created a good foundation for a successful final deal to end the war that began at the end of February. Vance's comments came after he and Iran's parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, wrapped up a lengthy round of initial talks aimed at solidifying a permanent end to the war between the countries. Vance said Iran had agreed to invite International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors back into the country. However, Iran did not acknowledge that, and it was not immediately clear how big a shift that would be. President Donald Trump on Saturday lashed out at Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, insisting that she asked over and over for a photo with him at the recent Group of Seven summit and criticizing what he said was Italy's lack of cooperation during the Iran war. I totally disagree with that. Meloni has been she's actually been taking a pretty strong stance against Israel. She's been a strong ally of the United States. She just doesn't want to be involved in this Iran war because obviously it's economically unsound for Rome, for Italy, right? And she cares about her people, and she understands that this Iran war is really just for Israel. It's not for America. Again, even Trump has said that this war isn't being fought for the United States. He said this is in interviews. Go back on my YouTube shorts, you'll find it. Even Trump has said that this war is for Iran, or this war is for Israel, This war is for Kuwait. This war is for Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Oman. He's even said this. So everything that we're hearing out of the Trump administration, who knows what they have on him? Maybe this is because of the Epstein files. Maybe this is because, we actually do have some kind of stronghold over the Iranians. Maybe there's actually some truth to what's happening. That is what we're analyzing here. Okay, so the remarks deepen the spat that began last week, which ultimately led Italy's foreign minister to cancel a planned trip to the United States. Trump on Saturday announced that federal authorities had made multiple arrests of people he said were vandalizing the reflecting pool as he struggled to explain why the $14 million plus rehabilitation project he launched for the nation's 250th anniversary seemingly backfired. Well, we have been seeing videos of people basically messing up the entire property and trying to get paint, chip the paint, all of this stuff, really messing with all of the progress of this reflective pool. But again, that's aside the point. Iran's lead negotiator insists Strait of Hormuz will be managed by Iran. The lead negotiator of the Iranian delegation, Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, insisted on Monday that the Strait of Hormuz will be managed by Iran and would follow international laws. Kalibaf, who is the Speaker of the Parliament, spoke with the Iran state media on a plane on his way back from Switzerland. Hopefully, we can activate the strait again in terms of passage and bring prosperity back to the regional and global economy. And so we also have to remember that the Chinese are impacted by this too. So the Chinese are very, because of the BRICS nations, China is very interested in the Strait of Hormuz being opened also. So it's actually very geopolitical when you look at this because, again, although Iran is controlling these choke points and basically trying to get the United States to willingly withdraw from the Strait of Hormuz. Again, we were controlling it. We did have control of it. We lost it once we did this all for Israel, and we bombed Iran for essentially no reason. Bad intel, bad information, as Joe Kent, former Green Beret and National Counterterrorism Director, has said. Hopefully, we can activate the strait again in terms of the passage and bring prosperity back to regional and global economy. Kalibef confirmed that the issue of releasing the frozen assets as well as the sale of Iranian oil were discussed in the talks with the U.S. So again, lots of big information here. Lots of big news, lots of big developments. Okay, so the question is, when are we actually going to see some kind of, real progress with this Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU? So again, not so fast. Iran says it didn't agree to nuclear inspections. So again, this comes from the TNR. Iranian state media says nuclear inspectors weren't discussed in Switzerland. So again, this was a picture from the Switzerland negotiations where we see Argachi here and the rest of the negotiating team basically walking out of this entire negotiation. Again, this was day one out of a 60-day negotiation period. So again, there's a lot more talks to be made. And this is only the beginning, so we're going to see what happens, but it doesn't look like it's going too well so far, especially because Israel is basically keeping their stance, and they're basically keeping a stronghold on their position that they want to keep the Strait of Hormuz. Despite Vice President JD Vance's claims, Iran state media says it will not allow nuclear inspectors into the country, complicating the agreement made between the U.S. and Iran. U.S. Vice President's claim regarding the return of International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors to Iran is false. In the Swiss negotiations, there was no discussion about the presence of inspectors in the country. An ex-post from the state-affiliated foreign news agency said in Farsi on Monday, citing an unnamed informed source. So again, an informed source in a conversation with the foreign news agency reporter, the U.S. Vice President's claim regarding the return of the IAEA's inspectors to Iran is false. This information source continued in the Swiss negotiations. There was no discussion about the presence of inspectors in the country. So what do we see here? Not a lot of progress. That is kind of what's happening. Meanwhile, we also have the stock market. And again, everything that's happening, that tech stocks tumble as SpaceX plunges, Amazon, Alphabet, Nvidia sells off. Future of the Dow Jones Industrial Average and other major stock indexes traded slightly higher ahead of Tuesday's open. On Monday, the stock market ended sharply amid ongoing U.S.-Iran peace talks. So ultimately, again, not too much progress. Again, stock market's looking okay, though, and we're not really in the worst position. SpaceX's stock plunged more than 16% Monday, extending a losing streak to 3 sessions after the company announced a senior unsecured notes offering and disclosed about $100.8 billion in cash. SpaceX stock closed at its lowest level, more than 31% off its recent record highs and about 14% above its $135 initial public offering price. Nvidia reversed from early gains to slide 1% back below its 50-day moving average line, a key level to watch. Finally, Amazon sold off at 4.8%, falling back to its long-term 200-day line, and Alphabet shares tumbled 5%, just above their latest buy at 349. U.S.-Iran talks continue. The U.S. and Iran held peace talks Sunday on Switzerland with Vice President JD Vance leading the U.S. delegation. Vance cited a lot of progress on Monday morning comments to reporters. He said Iran has invited nuclear inspectors while technical talks will continue. And again, as we know, the Iranians have not confirmed that. The Iranians basically said, no, that's not happening. That's not what's going on at all. So when we look at this entire thing and all of these different developments, it's not really... again, we're just seeing a lot of smoke and mirrors. On Sunday night, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Argachi, hailed major progress in ending the Lebanon fighting. He also said some frozen Iranian funds have been released. U.S. officials said the Strait of Hormuz was discussed. So again, a lot of this is not really too accurate, though, because basically Ben Gvir has made several statements. One of the big statements he made over the weekend was that for 1,000 Lebanese what was it? For 1,000 Lebanese mother that cry, not one single Israeli mother should cry, or something like that. And so pretty evil stuff. And again, Netanyahu has also said that, people in the United States believe that Donald Trump controls me, and people in Israel believe that I control Donald Trump, or vice versa. People in the United States believe that I control Donald Trump, he said, and then he said that people in Israel believe that Donald Trump controls me. He said none of those things are correct. We are both fighting for our independent nations, and we are going to take Hezbollah. We are not going to stop now, and we are going to take Lebanon. And they basically said that they're going to continue to really forward this entire siege on Lebanon for their southern Lebanon buffer zone, of which they call it. And essentially, when in reality, this is for the Greater Israel Project. They want to basically turn Lebanon into northern Israel. And again, after that, they want to expand onto Turkey. This is a part of the Greater Israel Project. This is not a conspiracy. And this is part of the Pax Judaica, essentially long plan in the making. So when we look at all of this, pretty crazy. On Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 0.3%, while the S&P 500 moved down 0.4%. The Nasdaq Composite tumbled 1.3%. Oil prices declined to roughly $74 a barrel, and the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield moved up near 4.51%, its highest close since June 10th. Ahead of Tuesday's opening bell, Dow Jones's future moved up less than 0.1%, while the S&P 500 futures gained 0.1%, and the Nasdaq 100 futures inched higher in overnight trade. Remember that overnight action in Dow Jones futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate to actual trading in the regular stock market session. So again, pretty crazy developments. Honestly, when we look at all of it, it's insane. We just got to be really careful about what's actually going on, and you got to be able to really decipher what's happening. So when you look at all of this, what do you think's going on? Leave your comments below, right? At the end of the day, this is where it's all about. This is what it's all about. It's about analyzing these markets. Again, these are the oil prices right now. When we look at these oil prices, right now we're pretty much looking at, again, the WTI crude standing at $73.86 a barrel. Again, Brent crude is at $77.94 a barrel. Murban crude's at $70.59, and natural gas is at $3.25 a gallon. So when we look at these prices, again, actually doing pretty good. The oil prices are back kind of in equilibrium. Maybe it's because of what JD Vance said. Maybe it's because of these peace talks actually going on. Insurance companies are feeling good about that in the as far as insuring these ships that are in these vessels that are in the Strait of Hormuz right now. Again, they want this traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. And so when you have these peace talks happening, that's going to impact the entire market. JD Vance's statements have been highly positive, stating that there's going to be essentially some kind of deal potentially made in the next 60 days. That's what this MOU is really going to accomplish if it works. And honestly, who knows? Lindsey Graham has already made statements that he doesn't think it's going to work, right? And we're going to be looking at these clips just in a few minutes here. So again, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, support the information. Ultimately, I think it's pretty wild. Pretty wild what we're looking at. Definitely in some pretty historic times. Crypto is pretty much in the same exact place that it was last week. Again, when we look at the prices and the fear and greed index, we're pretty much still at 22. Okay, now it's down a little bit more to 21 so people are fearful. People are not feeling good about crypto at the moment. And ultimately, again, Bitcoin's at $63,922.80. Ethereum's at $1,723. You got XRP at $1.12, Solana at $71.97. And by the way, big news on crypto. If you weren't paying attention, somebody just lost 14,000 XRP, over 14,000 XRP. So what is the lesson here? Don't move your crypto around. Don't trust anybody with your crypto. You should have some kind of hard wallet. And ultimately, don't be stupid, And I hate to say that so ruthlessly, but seriously, don't be moving your crypto around in volatile times, right? Don't trust anybody. And you have to be paranoid, right? The paranoid survive. And so as they always say. So again, when we look at this market, Hyperliquid sitting at $66.12, Dogecoin's at 8 cents. Stellar Lumens is at, again, that's XLM, 20 cents. Again, Monero is at $320.68. And then you have Cardano at 15 cents. It's crazy. That was up over like $1.50 just last year. Chainlink's at $7.86. And when you look at these other markets here, like Hedera Hashgraph, going to be big with X Money, big app that's coming out soon. You're going to see it. And Hedera Hashgraph, I think, is going to be a big mover. You got to remember, Kevin O'Leary's a big holder of HBAR, so who knows what's going to happen. Not financial advice, but maybe something to pay attention to. The prices are low. Buy these prices on discount if you're really caring about crypto, right? Because honestly, what is everybody investing in at the end of the day? It's crypto. Most people, they don't trust the system. Most people are just not feeling too hot about where things are going in this entire market, right? And so we got to be diligent. We have to be careful, but ultimately got to pay attention to the future, right? Everything's going to be a tokenized economy, and this is even what Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, has said. It's going to be a tokenized economy. Okay, and again, they got billions of dollars in this market, and once this Clarity Act passes, we're going to get more news on this July 1st. They said they're already going to kick this down. They're going to kick this can down the road even more. So it was supposed to take place July 4th, the Senate Ethics Committee markup hearing, which was going to decide a lot of what's going to happen with crypto. But now they want to move it after the Senate recess period, which is after July 13th. So now you're probably going to see more movement towards the end of July or probably towards the beginning of August. And if it's not then, and if it's not 2026, then you might even be waiting till 2032 because you're going to have you're probably going to get a Democrat who's going to get elected in here in 2028. We'll see what happens ultimately, but it's all important things to pay attention to. The Democrats are not in favor of crypto overall. You have Elizabeth Warren, who is anti-crypto, and so very important things to pay attention to with the crypto markets. Again, be safe, be careful when you invest in these new markets. This is not financial advice, but be smart enough to know what you're investing in, right? So again, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average sitting here at $51,712.71. So again, stock market's looking good, but is that inflated? And yes, it is. It is. It is inflation. And ultimately, as sad as it is to say, as much as I really do like Trump and I support his movements overall, I support most of what he's done in his presidency, but he's been making a lot of mistakes just this second time around, So it's something to pay attention to. Just got to be careful. So when we look at all of this, just understand that when we see all of these developments, it's not going to be good if we don't really balance out this economy somehow, some way. Bring these prices down, bring the inflation rates down, all important stuff. Right now, gold's sitting at $4,193.56, and in the last 7 days, we see that the price has gone down, significantly down. And then when you see it over the last 30 days, again, it's definitely gone down, right? So we got to pay attention to where things are going, but you still should invest in gold, I believe. Again, buy it on discount. When the prices go down, don't just go and sell your assets. There's a reason the rich are buying up gold right now. Whether it's Bitcoin, which is digital gold, or whether it is actual physical gold, it's important to invest in assets and appreciating assets, things that are tangible forever, things that you can put in your pocket, things that are a good hedge against inflation, which is, in fact, gold always has been since the beginning of time. Kind of a timeless asset. You can't even destroy gold, really. It's kind of hard to, right? So again, $65.05 for silver per ounce. And when we look at that 7-day price, really, we've been seeing quite a drop in both markets, right? So again, who knows where things are going? But I think in my predictions, you're going to see these markets go up. There's going to be some kind of stock market crash, I predict, in the future. Maybe I'll be wrong about that, but it looks like we are really heading in that direction. And when that day comes, you're going to see prices of gold and emerging assets like crypto go up. That's my prediction. And I think that when you see all of this happen, again, where the United States is going right now, we are in hyperinflation. And again, we also have, you have these emerging markets too. At the same time, you have the real estate markets where the interest rates are still high. It's keeping people down. Young people can't buy houses. I know this. I'm a real estate agent. I see it every day. I hear people talk about it every day. It's absolutely happening. Absolutely happening. So again, when we look at all of this, you just can't pay enough attention to it. Got to be careful where things are going and pay attention. So again, some other news that happened. IDF captured a Hezbollah drone factory and launch site hidden inside of South Lebanon. This comes from the Times of Israel. Troops raiding airbase dozens of meters below village near border find cache of 50 Iranian-made explosive UAVs that would have been fired into Israel from secret hillside shafts. So again, buried beneath the hilltop village in southern Lebanon, just kilometers from the Israeli border, the Hezbollah terror group built an underground drone airbase from which it launched Iranian-made unmanned aerial vehicles at Israel. The subterranean facility, guarded by massive steel blast doors, was built in the past decade with direct Iranian assistance, including planning and funding, Israeli military told the Times of Israel during an organized media tour of the site last week. So I find all of this timing interesting, right? And again, Joe Kent had said, Joe Kent he is former Green Beret. He is also the former director of national counterterrorism for all of this. So when he's been covering this, he's been saying that the Israelis are going to look for any kind of opportunity they can to basically say, see, the Iranians broke the ceasefire. See, Hezbollah is not maintaining the ceasefire. See, they did this. Now we have to attack them back. See, America, you have to go and attack Iran now. See, they're not abiding by the ceasefire. And this is what we're going to see. It's going to be things like this, right? Listen to the language of this article. Journalists were brought into Lebanon at dusk so that the visit to the tunnel would take place under the cover of darkness, an attempt by military to mitigate the possibility of Hezbollah attacks on members of the press. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, reporters were driven in a convoy of Humvees along the Lebanese coast before heading west toward Madal Zaun, some 6 kilometers, 3.7 miles from the Israeli frontier. With just moonlight and glow sticks to illuminate the way, soldiers led the group to the tunnel's main entrance, which was accessible from the ground level on the north side of the mountain. The tunnel and surrounding area, which was delineated as part of the southern Lebanon security buffer area in an updated IDF map Thursday, were captured this month by a reservist commando and paratroopers formation. The operation took place amid a porous ceasefire in which both Israel and Hezbollah have continued to attack each other. According to Israel Defense Forces, the tunnel runs several hundred meters into the mountain, reaching depths of 29 meters, which is 95 feet, under the Madal zone, including beneath a mosque. The IDF has uncovered similar Hezbollah tunnels in southern Lebanon in the past, but commanders said this one was built to a much higher standard, comparable with an underground Iranian missile factory in Syria that the military raided in September 2024. Soldiers and officers were made available to the tour on condition of anonymity in line with military protocol, and this is what was obtained from that location. Inside the tunnel, which was wide enough for a standard vehicle to drive through, Hezbollah had assembled Iranian-made drones using parts smuggled into Lebanon, according to the army. Iran, which has invested heavily in drone development and production, has long understood to supply its Lebanese proxy group with missiles and other arms meant to be used against Israel. After capturing the tunnel, soldiers found 50 UAVs with warheads of around 30 kilograms, 66 pounds of explosive apiece, officers said. So again, who knows? When you look at this, you can't really believe a lot of what the Israelis say because, again, it seems like everything they're doing is really intent on getting the United States more involved in this war and basically justifying what other people and other analysts, military analysts with far more experience than me. Again, I'm just law enforcement at the end of the day with, a little bit of entrepreneurial experience. I'm not a former military at all. Not going to steal that valor. But you have military analysts who are saying the same thing, that Israel is really inflating a lot of this information to continue and drive forward this war, right? They're saying that Hezbollah is attacking them when really it's been Israel who's attacking Hezbollah. And Israel is really, again, they're really doing this because they want to take over Lebanon. And they want this as their northern front. And eventually they want to merge this into Israel. The drones appeared to be the same type used in the attacks on Israel, such as the deadly October 2024 strike on the Golani Brigade's training base. This can typically fly 200 to 500 kilometers, 125 to 310 miles, enough to reach all of Israel, according to IDF officials. Military analyst Fabian Hinz identified the UAVs as an Iranian drone design known as the KSEF in service of Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. The capture of the tunnel marked the first time that the IDF had access to fully intact Iranian drones of this kind, providing the military with valuable intelligence, one officer told the Times of Israel. The drones in various states of assembly were placed on display along the tunnel's concrete walls for journalists on the tour to see. In addition to the UAVs, the troops found around 8 tons of explosive material in the underground site's rooms, according to the army. So again, this is a big find by Israel, ultimately at the end of the day, and big win for Israel when it comes to this entire Israel versus Hezbollah war. Okay, and kind of a big hit to Iran too. So who knows? Again, at the end of the day, you got to be careful about a lot of the information that comes out. You never know what's true, but you got to always check. You got to always verify. Very interesting to talk about. So again, when you look at all of this, rather important to analyze all of it. So again, Israel fears Trump is strengthening Iran's hand in Lebanon. Israel's government is concerned that the U.S. is effectively legitimizing Iran's influence in Lebanon and eroding Israel's freedom of operation there through new understandings reached in Switzerland and the memorandum of understanding signed with Iran last week, two Israeli sources told Axios. So again, this is an article from Axios. So when we hear about all these stories happening in Israel, we also have the United States who is trying to pull out of this war. The Iran war does not benefit the United States. It's as simple as that. It does not benefit the United States. To the extent that it does, yes, we control the Strait of Hormuz. We get a little bit of that oil. But ultimately, we also have Venezuela already, which is a huge, huge source of the world's oil supply. Not a lot of people know that. The United States is also oil rich. A lot of people don't know that. They tell you that, oh, the United States is not oil rich. Opinions may vary on that. But ultimately, when we look at things, again, I think a lot of this it's pushed up to basically push forward the petrodollar. And this is what we have to understand. Again, even Trump has said, the United States of America is oil rich. We're oil rich. And so when you see all of that, you can obviously see that this petrodollar war is the main war at the end of the day. Iran has managed to wrap the situation in Lebanon to its negotiations in the U.S. in order to support its proxy Hezbollah. The Trump administration accepts that it must now contain Israel's actions in Lebanon in order to advance its diplomacy with Iran. Israeli officials worry that the new understandings will undermine months of efforts by the U.S. and Israel to see, they include the U.S. in there, but I guess it's fair enough, to weaken Hezbollah and to decrease Iran's influence in Lebanon. More immediately, they're also worried about pushback from D.C. each time they want to conduct a strike on Lebanese soil or pressure from Trump to withdraw from southern Lebanon while Hezbollah threat still exists. Driving the new U.S.-Iran MOU stipulates that both countries and their allies will end the hostilities, including in Lebanon, and ensure the country's territorial integrity and sovereignty, which are undermined by Israel's ongoing occupation in southern Lebanon. There were several rounds of fighting in the days after it was signed, though the last ceasefire renewal has held since Saturday. Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz and to skip the Switzerland talks if Israel continues to attack. And again, what did Israel say? They're going to continue their entire movement. Okay. Some articles are saying that there's a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, and obviously that's not happening. Again, I just read you an article, just the previous article I read you, that basically Israel is going to continue fighting this war. Again, Israel is they just basically took down an entire Hezbollah site in these tunnels, right? So again, once the talks actually began on Sunday, Lebanon was one of the key issues discussed. The parties agreed to create a new deconfliction cell together with Lebanon and the Pakistani and Qatari mediators to ensure the ceasefire holds. Between the lines, Israeli sources claim that the new U.S.-Iran agreements on Lebanon erode previous understandings reached between Netanyahu governments and the Biden administration in 2024, which were blessed by the incoming Trump administration. Under the November 2024 Lebanon ceasefire agreement brokered by the Biden administration, Israel retained the right to act against both imminent threats and emerging threats posed by Hezbollah. Under the current conditions, Israel's freedom of action appears to be limited to imminent threats only. And while the previous ceasefire monitoring mechanism involved Israel, Lebanon, the U.S., and France, this time Israel is not a direct participant, while Iran is. Furthermore, the Biden-era monitoring mechanism was focused on coordination to dismantle Hezbollah's military infrastructure in southern Lebanon, while this one will focus on de-escalation between the Israeli military and Hezbollah. So very interesting developments. Again, we do see a shift when it comes to U.S. politicians and this kind of Israel-first attitude, right? We're seeing a little bit less of that, especially after this H.R. 8800, and, you have Section 222 to 224 and 618, and all these different sections, subsections of this entire bill of the National Defense Authorization Act, fiscal year 2027, where it basically fuses the United States military and the Israeli military together, allowing Israel to have all this control and hegemony over our entire intelligence operations and all of our basically weapons control, all of these things, and very, very dangerous. Okay. One reason is that Israel's actions against Hezbollah have enormous domestic political salience. ahead of October's elections. Again, that's a big deal because Bibi is facing trial right now. He's basically facing prison time for corruption and corruption charges. Again, that is allegedly. Bibi is hysterical about it, the source said, referring to Netanyahu by his nickname. In recent days, Netanyahu asked his close confidant, Ron Dermer, who left government several months ago, to urgently use his relationship with Trump's team to try to influence the U.S.-Iran talks on Lebanon, according to the same Israeli source. The source claimed Dermer's involvement helped lead to a Truth Social post in which Trump threatened to strike Iran if it didn't restrain Hezbollah. A U.S. official confirmed Dermer's participation and said the U.S. negotiations in Switzerland spoke to him several times on Sunday to brief him on the Iran talks and to get his input. We were transparent with them, the official said. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun is willing to accept the new mechanism as long as it is led by the U.S., according to a Lebanese official. Vice President Vance and Trump's envoy, Jared Kushner, briefed Aoun about the deconfliction mechanism in a call on Monday morning. What they're saying, a senior U.S. official contended that that Iran has been deeply involved in Lebanon for decades and claimed Israel doesn't have to be concerned about the new mechanism for Lebanon. So again, that's pretty much a lot of what this article says here. And so again, let's take a look at some of these other videos and see what's new here. Again, I want to go through these clips that I had posted on my shorts and just kind of giving a summary of what we saw over the past weekend and some of the developments in the Switzerland meeting between JD Vance and Arghachi, the Iranian head negotiator, who a lot of people are saying snubbed JD Vance. He didn't shake his hand. And so we'll see some of that. What do you guys think? This is the Trump peace deal allegedly failing. Iran walks out of negotiations in protest of Trump's threats. So again, how well are these protests really going, right? When we see all of this, how well are they actually going? This is footage from the actual event where you have all of this happening, right? So again, what do you think? When you look at this, it's honestly just crazy. Yeah, he snubs him right here. So again, just rewind that a little bit. He just totally ignores JD Vance. JD Vance handled it pretty well. But ultimately, look at that face. He's just disgusted by JD Vance. And they do not want to talk. Handled it pretty well, though. And then you can see Vance in the background here. You see Jared Kushner right here. Steve Witkoff right next to him. And JD Vance is like, damn, what do we do? Came here from nothing. That's what he's thinking. And then, of course, Jared Kushner is always over his shoulder, right? So very interesting to see how these, things are really developing. So this is a clip from today. Iran negotiation update. JD Vance, very, very, very good day as Iran talks continue for peace.
First, we wanted to build a mechanism for keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. It is open. We've seen, of course, gas prices and oil prices come down, millions and millions of barrels of crude and natural gas flowing through the Strait of Hormuz that weren't flowing before. But we also wanted to make sure that we actually set up the coordination mechanism so that we could demine the Straits of Hormuz, so that when there are the conflicts that inevitably come up, we can make sure we work through them rather than that leading to escalation, and that is exactly what we did yesterday.
Would you describe the progress on Lebanon? I know Mr. Arghachi said it was very good progress, but what's your characterization of it?
Yeah, I would describe it as very good progress, too. I mean, look, we want a regional ceasefire, right? We want Hezbollah to stop firing at our friends in Israel. We want Israelis to be able to live in peace. We also want to make sure that, when things happen, they don't spiral into a broader escalation. And so we've been, I think, very good at setting up what we're calling a deconfliction mechanism. But what it really is to say that when things happen, the sides are actually talking to one another. Sometimes, you've got a bit of a chicken and egg problem, that you've got a junior guy who fires a drone that didn't have approval from the high command. Okay, of course, Israel has to respond to that. But then sometimes that response, we could actually have a better and more peaceful situation if Israel responds in the context of a conversation that's ongoing between Hezbollah, Lebanon, Israel, and other partners in the region. There really hasn't been a mechanism to have those discussions until around 4 p.m. yesterday time. Look, what people raised yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials call trash talk, you can't expect the president to break the record. So when they say things are true, the president is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it. What we're trying to do is to say, first of all, Israel and every other nation in the region has the right of self-defense, but we want to make sure that everybody has that right of self-defense in the background where we're talking about how to de-escalate these conflicts rather than spiraling out of control. Sometimes what will happen is that if the conflict spirals out of control, that's worse for everybody's self-defense and worse for everybody's security. But now, I will say, you already see the fruits of that. Over the past 24 hours, it's probably been the most peaceful that we've seen the situation in Lebanon. The previous 24 hours were pretty good. Obviously, there was some shooting about 72 hours ago. So this is a work in progress, but what we've done is actually set up the operation so that we can ensure it doesn't spiral out of control in the future.
Honest to God, though, I mean, like,
first,
JD Vance, like, he's actually been doing pretty good, I think, handling this, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, who is JD Vance? They're really trying to prop up JD Vance. And again, I'm not completely hating on him because I like this clip right here where he's actually speaking out against Israel a little bit and he's telling the truth about the situation going on with Israel. And this I really did like. I really did think that this was actually something most of our politicians need to do and what they need to say.
What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time.
Yeah.
And he happens to be the head of state of the world.
Yeah, the only one.
If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. What I will say,
I would
and
agree
this
with
does
that.
bother me, is that you've seen.
So I mean, again, you know, as much as I'm not a fan that JD Vance is completely funded by Peter Thiel, and I've been seeing it all over X. I mean, like, it's everywhere. Like, they're really pushing JD Vance to be president, you know, and ultimately it's like, who else are they going to pick? Like, who are the options? It's JD Vance, it's Marco Rubio. That's really, for the GOP, that's who it's going to end up being. And then for the Democrats, you're looking at Gavin Newsom probably. And, you know, that's really where things are going. And so who would be your choice if you had to choose? Would you choose JD Vance or Rubio? If you had to choose any for the GOP, if you were a Republican, right? And for Democrats, I mean, it's probably going to be Gavin Newsom at the end of the day. Honestly, they're not giving you much of a choice, but ultimately I still like that, you know, JD has been talking against, you know, Israel, because somebody needs to. Our politicians just need to say what is true, what is accurate, what is factual, you know, and the facts of the matter is Israel's not our greatest ally. They've been actually a great adversary. And as much as we can still be allies with Israel, you know, we can still, you know, we can trade and do things together. You know, Israel is still a superpower. It's not like really the worst idea to still have them as an ally, but we should absolutely treat them like a European ally or like Russia or China competitors. You know, we should not have them, you know, having as much access as they do to our military. It's just absolutely, you know, insane. So again, meanwhile, you have Lindsey Graham saying things like this as all of this is going on. The warmonger, the Disneyland warmonger.
A diplomatic solution. I think it's going to fail. What happens next? I spent 4.5 hours with President Trump Friday. Here's what I think will happen next. If this deal fails, President Trump is going to take the Strait of Hormuz over by force. The United States will control the Strait of Hormuz. We'll charge a fee for all those who go through to pay for the operation. And we're going to expand the Abraham Accords in calendar year 2026. We're going to get Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. and which is the biggest change in 5,000 years in the Mideast. And if Iran contests control of the Strait of Hormuz by the United States, we will obliterate them. So to all the people,
this is why the Iranians walked out of the negotiations. That's specifically and precisely why the Iranians walked out of the JD Vance negotiations. It's this kind of talk. It is this, anti-Iran, this anti-peace, this warmongering, this, it's like they're basically saying, yeah, we're going to try this diplomacy thing, but you know what? It's not going to work, and we're just going to go and bomb them anyways. And, how is China going to react to that? How is Russia going to respond to that? They're going to say, well, you're not doing that. And they're going to it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We already had control of the Strait of Hormuz before this entire war started. And now they want us to basically continue bombing Iran on behalf of Israel for their benefit. And again, when we could be taking Greenland, we could be taking Cuba, we could be taking South America and liberating the, again, Western Hemisphere, that Monroe Doctrine, which is not the worst idea. Again, oil rich in Venezuela, huge oil supply there. And again, we are oil rich in America. Again, they tell you that that's not true, but this is all for the petrodollar war. They got to keep this theory spinning. They got to keep this entire narrative spinning that, oh, we're running low on oil supplies. And ultimately, it's like, well, we actually are oil rich in the United States. They won't tell you that, but we are. And the thing is, a lot of the oil is just occupied by these billionaires and these oil hounds, these big oil guys, right? You ever watch the show Dallas, you'll see what I'm saying. It's kind of what the game is. And then at the highest levels, it gets into politics. You have these Trump oil meetings and these press conferences where Trump has an entire roundtable of like 60 different oil executives. I mean, this is big oil, it's America. And that's why we're in this war, right? That's why we were in the Iraq war, for oil. And we just want, the more oil you have, the more you control that petrodollar. And that's what the United States always wanted. We wanted to control the entire planet. And we were using oil to do that and to build military bases in Iraq and basically in all of the Gulf states. And then Iran was the big fish, was the big prize. Because if we could basically conquer Iran, we would have all of this oil. And essentially, we would dominate the world. That would be our lever, our Trojan horse to punch through and basically control the entire planet. Basically, the Roman Empire. Maybe not the worst thing. But the problem is the strategy behind the Trump administration right now is just not the right strategy. It's not going to work. You don't have the American incentive behind this war. You don't have most Americans who are in support of it. And that's the issue with this. It's not, Americans just aren't really supporting it overall. And, that's how we're not going to win a war, right? Same thing with Vietnam. Like, why were we there? Nobody really knows. Nobody can really answer. And so that's kind of the biggest issue when you see all of that. So again, when we look at the maritime traffic, I also wanted to go over what we're seeing here in the Strait of Hormuz. We got these two vessels I've been seeing over the past week or two, and they kind of planted these here. These are fake. The Handala failed. Pleasure craft. These are all basically placed here strategically to make it seem like there's flow through in the Strait of Hormuz and to basically troll analysts like me into believing that it's real. But same thing with this. The Jersey Devil 404. This isn't real. Okay, these are not real vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And again, most U.S. vessels you're not going to see on AIS when it comes to marine traffic. Okay, so again, where we're looking right now, we're looking at the Strait of Hormuz, Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia, Gulf of Oman area. And so again, they planted these two little pleasure crafts here, a sailing vessel and then a pleasure craft right here. And when you do the research on these vessels, look at this, the Jersey Devil sailing vessel. The Jersey Devil primarily refers to a specific U.S. vessel involving geopolitical tracking anomaly events or a well-known line of custom sport fishing powerboats. The Jersey Devil 404 sailing vessel, AIS anomaly. In early June 2026, maritime traffic circles and defense analysts noted an unusual occurrence involving a vessel broadcasted as the Jersey Devil 404, officially registered as the automatic identification system, the AIS networks, and as a sailing vessel flying the United States flag. Again, you don't really see that too often. You won't really see American flags. You don't see it because we kind of have a lot of control over the Navy. It's a huge troll, right, to analysts. They also want to spin this narrative that there's actually traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz right now when it's extremely limited. And, right now the Iranians literally closed the strait this past week. All right, so the record, officially registered on the automatic, okay, we read that. The transponder signals reported a length overall 20 meters. The incident, security observers noted that the transponder profile appeared to change or morph while located directly in the center of the Strait of Hormuz. This is a strategic marine choke point heavily monitored for military and political activity. Analysts publicly joked or speculated that it was a spoofed signal or a tongue-in-cheek tracking anomaly meant to confuse regional monitors. So again, that's to confuse people like me, basically, to make you believe that there's actually traffic going through. And again, the Jersey Cape Devil custom yachts, power boats, that's a little bit different. And again, when you look at more of this, you go on. The Jersey Devil 404, well, I'm going to go down again. The Jersey Devil 404, why does it keep doing that? The Jersey Devil 404 sailing vessel is not a real ship. Experts classify it as a prominent example of AIS trolling, a form of electronic warfare and psychological deception. The signal emerged in the Strait of Hormuz amid intense military tensions. It broadcasted the identity of a fictitious 20-meter U.S.-flagged sailboat behaving erratically in a high-security war zone. Again, this is really annoying because Google AI keeps like updating this page, and it keeps losing my spot. So again, when we look at this, in modern naval conflict, manipulating the automatic identification system serves several distinct military and psychological purposes. Strategic trolling and psychological warfare. Unlike traditional cloaking, this is a deliberate maritime mockery. By broadcasting a cartoonish American cryptid Jersey Devil in the middle of a heavily monitored choke point, the actors are demonstrating complete electronic dominance. It signals to regional adversaries that their tracking networks can be infiltrated and manipulated at will. If a navy is moving highly sensitive assets such as submarines, stealth combat craft, or special forces platforms, flooding enemy screens with a ghost civilian sailboat creates data clutter. Coast Guards and naval operators must waste time verifying whether Jersey Devil 404 is a real distraction or an error, pulling attention away from actual covert transits. Pollution of open source intelligence. Modern conflicts are tracked live by civilian analysts using platforms like marine traffic. By injecting absurd text into static fields like names, destinations, or voyage data, state actors deliberately pollute public data streams. This creates a fog of war, ensuring that public and media cannot confidently identify what is actually happening on the water. Electronic countermeasures testing. The Strait of Hormuz is a massive testbed for electronic warfare. Generating a persistent, flawless false identity requires a spoofing of both global satellite networks and terrestrial AIS receivers. These fakes allow electronic warfare units to test how deeply they can penetrate and fool regional maritime security platforms without firing a single shot. So this is just like, this is the level of warfare that you think that you're analyzing the actual Strait of Hormuz. You think that this is real. It's not. Okay, you think that these vessels right here are real. They're not. And this is designed to throw you off. And it's designed for, again, deception and for distraction. Okay, what we do know is this is why you can't really follow individual vessels when you look at the Strait of Hormuz or anything like this, right? You actually have to follow clusters of anchored ships and vessels. And what does the pattern tell you, right? So you see these red dots here. You see the little red triangles showing that they're in motion. Red dots show that they're anchored down. These are crude oil tankers or LNG or LPG tankers. So you got to look at the patterns of where these people or where these ships and vessels are, right? So usually near Fujairah is where insurance companies usually want these ships to hang out. And basically, again, you have limited traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. And again, I mean, it should tell you something that, again, you have Iranian vessels right here, literally. Like if you look at any of these vessels, again, that's a different one. Where was it? That's the same one I was looking at. One of these is an Iranian vessel. It's like right next to it. So it would make no sense. Yeah, this is an Iranian cargo vessel right here. So again, you look at all of these different ships here, and it starts to not make sense, right? You actually have real ships here that actually have, real, like, reported data. So again, it is just basically a troll. So you see these different kinds of vessels sitting here, and it's basically, again, psychological warfare and deception. This is why you always need to be careful about what you're looking at when you look at just because you're looking at a marine traffic map doesn't mean you're looking at the actual real-time data. Again, anybody can kind of plant this information here. So again, but what you can see is the patterns of several different vessels, hundreds of vessels in the same spots, right? Clusterings is what you need to look for. You see the blockade right here where my cursor is. Okay, you go over to this side, see more clusters here, right? So everybody, again, this has looked the same pretty much for months now. So I've been tracking this for months. When you see marine traffic, again, nothing has really changed too much. And again, how would you really know unless you're actually there, right? Qatar's been getting bombed like crazy. Again, they've been getting struck and hit by the Iranians. And again, you still have all these vessels at the same time all clustered up here in the same spot. Fishing vessels mostly that you'll see. But again, not a lot of traffic. What's interesting that's different is I do see more traffic around Karg Island finally. So this is what I find interesting. So you look at what kind of vessels, you see mostly Iranian vessels securing this area, kind of surrounding it. So what does that tell you? Well, they're suspecting some kind of American activity in these areas, right? Damn it, I keep freaking clicking on these. So when you look at all these different vessels, again, a lot of these are Iranian vessels, and they're pretty much monitoring the zone. Some of these fishing boats are actually like gunboats. A lot of people don't know that. You have tugboats and basic, your basic kind of stuff. But again, Trump has basically said, and Lindsey Graham, they want to take Karg Island. That will be the next move you pretty much end up seeing. If the United States continues this war, I think you'll see them take Karg Island or try to. And I don't know if that's going to succeed. I think it's going to be a bloodbath, personally. I hope that doesn't happen. But basically, they want this because they believe that because this is such a massive import-export zone for the Iranians, that we'll be able to control this entire area. And essentially, that will mean we can control the entire region, which makes no sense because Iran's right here on the side of the map. I mean, literally, it's huge. 90 million people. They got all of their missiles pointed right at the island. They'll blow the island up if they have to just to get us off of it, right? Look at what they've been doing to Kuwait, just across the Persian Gulf. Again, you've been seeing it. If you've been on X, you've been following what's going on. You see everything that's going on with Kuwait. You see everything that's been going on with all these different strikes. Okay, so again, you also have the Red Sea. You still have traffic going north to south through the Red Sea. Again, same kind of pattern we've been seeing for weeks, for months now. The Suez Canal, very limited movement here. A little bit more traffic, but again, not a lot. Pretty much the exact same. You still have anchored crude oil tankers over here. And then again, you have a lot of, you still have a lot of anchored vessels in this area, just north of Port Said. So again, and then in Israel, you have pretty much the same amount of traffic coming in and out, just obviously without any kind of traffic going to Gaza, right? So very interesting developments. And again, not a lot of traffic going to Lebanon either. So that's kind of what the situation is in the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait still has traffic going through it right here. And ultimately, you really still have vessels being forced to go around this southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, and forced to go all the way around Africa to Europe and to basically reach their destinations of trade. So that's pretty much what's going on when it comes to that. But yeah, you got to be careful when you're looking at maritime traffic because all of these are basically false vessels, right? You have the Handala failed vessel and a real physical tracking craft, but it is highly likely that its broadcast name and data are being used as a weaponized misinformation signal or psychological operation. The vessel is registered as a 16-meter U.S.-flagged pleasure craft. Its live tracking data via marine traffic places its activity transiting the Strait of Hormuz. However, its highly contested naval choke points what a vessel broadcast on the automatic identification system is awfully intentionally manipulated. So again, psychological warfare, PSYOPs against Iran-aligned groups. The Handala Cyber Warfare Group is an aggressive, Iran-linked state-sponsoring hacking collective. They have repeatedly targeted Israel, leaked Israeli Navy officer information, and sent direct threatening texts to U.S. Marines and naval personnel in the Persian Gulf. So, broadcasting Handala failed from the U.S.-flagged vessel directly under the nose of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in the Strait of Hormuz is a massive public taunt. It projects dominance, mocking both the Iranian hacking collective and the physical interception of the Gaza Handala aid ship, which was seized by Israel. Strategic contents of the Strait of Hormuz closure. The vessel's transit coincides with the immense geopolitical tension. Iran recently ordered the Strait of Hormuz closed following disputes over U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding. Hundreds of ships have been left stranded or are navigating mined waters. The deception. A pleasure craft or private entity operating in a closed, military-controlled zone might deliberately change its AIS name to act as a decoy, mask its true ownership, or to distract Iranian radar operator tracking systems. Spoofing and AIS manipulation, electronic warfare. In modern maritime warfare, you cannot always trust AIS data. AIS spoofing is a common electronic warfare tactic where land-based transmitters or military electronic suits project fake vessel coordinates or alter legitimate ship data. It is entirely possible that the real owners of the pleasure craft did not input this name. Instead, state actors or hackers may have intercepted and spoofed the transponder data to broadcast Handala failed across public tracking sites like marine traffic to fabricate a viral, mocking geopolitical narrative. So, ultimately, got to be careful what you're looking at all times. So again, when we're looking at all of it, it's kind of insane to think about. Absolutely insane. But this is the world of psychological warfare, psyops, power. This is how it works. So again, when we're looking at some of these breaking news stories here, let's take a look at what's new on X. Again, we'll look at the breaking. Actually, first we'll look at the bookmarks, some of the videos I wanted to look at first. Iran is already pushing back on Trump and Vance's version of the frozen assets deal. Iran's central bank's governor, Alandasar Hamadi, says the signed documents do not force Tehran to buy American agricultural products with the released money. He claims that the U.S. food is cheaper and better quality. Iran can buy it. But Iran says that it can also use its second tranche from frozen assets to purchase any goods that are not under sanctions. That matters because Trump and Vance have framed the deal as money that would flow back to the U.S. framers, though corn, soy, and wheat purchases. Iran is now making the opposite point that funds are Iranian, and Tehran says it will spend them based on price, quality, and sanctions rules. So, sheesh. Again, Qatar is now accusing Netanyahu of fueling the region's escalation while Doha tries to stop the conflict from spreading further. PM Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Raham Al Thani, these names, said Netanyahu has repeatedly created escalation through occupation, expansion into Lebanese Syrian territories, and failure to meet withdrawal obligations in Gaza. Qatar's position is now very clear: respect state sovereignty, de-escalate, and contain the conflict before the region gets dragged into even more suffering. So again, that's kind of what we're seeing there. Polymarket put out a tweet just an hour ago. The UK is reportedly considering forcing social media platforms to prioritize trusted news in users' feeds and searches. Trusted news, that means mainstream media only. Not good at all. Definitely not good. And then, according to Insider World News, Israel's Prime Minister, Minister of Defense, and Chief of Staff stated that the IDF will continue to maintain its security zone in southern Lebanon. So yeah, right there. It's all there when you look at it. Nothing's really changing. JD Vance on frozen Iranian funds. Fundamentally, that money is not going to be unfrozen unless we continue to see progress, and that will obviously be a big part of negotiation in the days to come. So again, here's JD Vance.
Even with the caveat that's going to benefit American farmers and obviously benefit.
Sir, you mentioned for the Iranians using these frozen funds.
Sure.
To buy American soy, for example. Is that something that was raised yesterday that they've already agreed to? The Iranians have already agreed to that?
Yeah, that was something that came up yesterday, and we actually asked the Qataris to help us set up the mechanism so that we can ensure that the money goes where we want it to go, and they agreed to do that. We have a good relationship, obviously, with them and a good operational oversight mechanism in place. But even with that said, even with the caveat that's going to benefit American farmers and obviously benefit the people of Iran, we want both. But fundamentally, that money is not going to be unfrozen unless we continue to see progress. So that'll obviously be a big part of the negotiation in the days to come.
Sir, you mentioned for the Iranians using these frozen funds.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Again, we'll see. Again, I'm proud of JD Vance, honestly. I think he's been doing a pretty good job overall, handling himself pretty decently. But overall, this is the American taxpayers that we have to pay for this war. And what is it any benefit to us? None. None whatsoever. Again, Polymarket federal judge blocks DOJ subpoenas aimed at Tim Walz, calling them blatantly unlawful. How is that possible? Again, let's focus on this tweet for a minute. Polymarket. Justin, federal judge blocks the DOJ subpoenas aimed at Tim Walz, calling them blatantly unlawful. So again, federal judge blocks the DOJ subpoenas. What does that tell you? Again, that tells you that we live in a corrupt state. Again, we are living in a time where a lot of bad things are happening. A lot of corruption is going on, and nothing's being done about it. Tim Walz basically is the reason that all of Minneapolis was set under fire. What was that girl's name? She was shot and killed. Unfortunately, very unfortunate. ICE ended up getting into this altercation, this shooting. Can't remember her name. Renee Good. It was Renee Good, and essentially she was killed, basically resisting the police and driving away. And then this other officer, she basically almost ran this ICE agent over. And again, totally just crazy people. And again, I'm talking about Renee Good. No offense to Renee Good. I mean, obviously, I mourn the death. I don't support death or anything that's happening. But, it's like all of this chaos happened because of Tim Walz inviting and just basically pushing out ICE, not standing up for law enforcement, having no law and order in his city. Same thing with the mayor of Minneapolis. Very, very wretched stuff. And you see Nick Shirley, he's literally exposed this. What was it, $118 million of fraud or something like that? Or was it $18 million? I can't remember exactly the figure. I'd have to go back. You can watch one of my Rumble episodes where I cover it. But seriously, it's like, it's crazy. There's just total corruption in the United States, and we just do not enforce the law anymore. And this needs to change.
Yesterday, when Arachi came into the room and did not.
So again, this is JD Vance responding. This is JD Vance responding to basically being snubbed and basically Aragachi not shaking his hand or participating in the photo op with JD Vance.
So very quickly, there was a moment yesterday when Arachi came into the room and did not greet you. You guys did not shake hands, and then he walked out of the room. Did you feel snubbed by that? Did you feel it was an intentional move on their part? How did you interpret what happened?
No, I mean, I trust me, I've spent a lot of time dealing with the Iranians over the last few months. Sometimes I find them extremely confusing as negotiators. But look, we had a little press conference. They obviously...
Sir, very quickly...
Yeah, so, I mean, like, come on, JD Vance. Let's go, man. Seriously. And then this is Iran's Galabaf. God willing, Lebanon's national sovereignty over its entire territory will reach a final resolution in these talks, and until it does, we will not abandon them. So again, this is a big part of the MOU, is that, again, the United States basically has to force Israel, or Israel has to willingly leave Lebanon. And until that happens, then this is just going to continue on. The Iranians are fighting for the people of Lebanon and their sovereignty, really. That's ultimately what's happening. The Iranians are really not backing Hezbollah. Yeah, they're backing Hezbollah they're using Hezbollah as a proxy to get rid of the Israelis from that entire southern front of Lebanon. Everything we've been seeing there is just completely diabolical. And there is a genocide happening. Again, that's according to a lot of other military analysts. And so when you look at this, I mean, it's a very real thing. Everything that the Jewish people suffered in the Holocaust and everything that they had to go through, they are now doing the same thing. Okay, again, this is according to lots of other military analysts, not just Brendan Ecker. They are doing the same thing that they endured during the Holocaust. They're doing the same thing to the people of not just Palestine and Gaza, but now the people of Lebanon. And again, Hezbollah, yeah, we can debate their role in this and them being the middlemen, using civilian villages. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing from the Israelis every day, and again, go on my YouTube shorts, you can follow the entire war and all of these different attacks, all of these different strikes happening, and you see that basically this is just it's continuing on and on and on and on. And so it's pretty crazy to see how this is all developing. But the Iranians are fighting for the Lebanese people's sovereignty, and that's really what we're seeing here. So until Israel leaves Lebanon, this is going to keep going on. I just don't see this war ending anytime soon. We got 60 days to make this peace deal happen. And if not, we go right back to the old ways where we're going to be bombing Iran. Meanwhile, we are the ones living in the dark ages. So again, when you look at this, when you look at these videos and you see just the glorious architecture and real estate that we once had, you see the Roman Colosseum and you see the beautiful architecture of Europe, and now we have parking garages and plain white houses, and you have nothing beautiful anymore. And it's just the most sad thing to see in the world, is it not? So you see this and you're just like, it's honestly heartbreaking. What have we done to our society? What is the history that we've lost? I mean, again, look at this architecture. Why can't we go back to these times? I want to live in a country where we build monumental, beautiful architecture. And I think it's worth it to continue all of this. It's worth it to continue, having something beautiful in this country and truly building something worthwhile, you know. And ultimately, instead, we're building parking garages and really ugly things today in 2026. And it's just like, what is the purpose in that? You know, really, what is the point in building things that absolutely are just not beautiful at all? And that's just kind of my issue with it. You know, what is the real solution to all of this? And I think it's just to become innovative again. So again, Benjamin Netanyahu admits he has changed Israel's security doctrine to strictly follow the Babylonian Talmud. Kill them first. We initiate, we attack, we surprised. Kill them first. This is in the words of Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.
So if you know Hebrew,
right here.
We change Israel's security doctrine. We initiate,
look at this.
We attack, we surprise, and we attack those enemies that seek our destruction, that seek to kill us. We attack them before they have a chance to do so. If you know Hebrew, Akam leorgecha, Ashkem leorgo. Kill them first.
And so again, if you don't know the motto of the Mossad, which is the CIA of Israel, their motto is, by way of deception, we shall rise and kill them first. By way of deception, we will rise and kill them first. That is the motto of the Mossad. And again, not the worst motto, really. If you're trying to be a powerful military, if you're trying to strategically win a battle. But the question is it morally justified? Is it morally okay? And I don't think it is, ultimately. You know, this is the same way the Nazis believed. And, you know, it is a fact of the matter. You know, you cannot deny that this is absolutely really happening. And then you have these clips of the Israeli National Security Minister, Ben Gvir. 1,000 Lebanese mothers may cry, but not a single Israeli mother.
יפלו דמעות, ידמעו 1,000 אמהות לבנוניות, ולא אמא ישראלית אחת. לא יכול להיות מצב שאנחנו נהיה בלבנון, ואנחנו נהיה מוגבלים.
So again,
ולכן אני אומר, יש קו אדום.
You know, like, come on. You know, and it's like we're supposed to just pretend like this isn't happening. Israeli National Security Minister Ben Gvir. With the Iranians, there is no point in making compromise and no point signing agreements. The Iranians need to be bombed and then bombed again and then bombed again. And it's the same with Hezbollah. Just keep bombing them and then bomb them again and again. That's how it works. Anyone who wants to condemn me can condemn me. Let people around the world say whatever they want. I truly believe this. This is again not in Brendan. This is not in Brendan Ecker's words. This is in the words of the Defense Minister of Israel, Ben Gvir. No, I think Netanyahu here provided him that Hezbollah continues to operate. So again, let's translate what he's saying here. Again, they're on the captions, but we'll just read it. There is innocence here. This is American innocence. There is no need to make compromises with the Iranians and no need to sign agreements. The Iranians need to be bombed and bombed and bombed again and so on with Hezbollah. Just bomb them and bomb them and bomb them and bomb them. That's how it works, and whoever wants to condemn me, let them condemn me. They'll say all sorts of things in the world. I really believe in this. I believe that if we were to show strength and we are the owners of the house, they think 10 times. So again, this is what's going on. This is what's being said in the state of Israel. This is what's happening. Okay, and we're supposed to pretend that none of this is going on. There's a certain naivete here, an American naivete. So basically, again, saying that the Americans are naive and that we just don't understand. When it's like, yeah, we kind of do.
That seek our destruction, that seek
so here's one more clip of Netanyahu.
We attack them before they have a chance to do so. If you know Hebrew, Akam leorgecha, Ashkem leorgo. Kill them first.
So again, we already went over that clip, sorry. But ultimately, it's like, it's insane. You know, all of these things going on today, and we're supposed to just not say anything about it. Absolutely insane. And then we also have the Syrian leader who's possibly going to take over a lot of these negotiations, and not the negotiations. He's basically going to take control of Lebanon. And this is Trump's idea to put him in charge. He is literally the leader of a terrorist organization.
في حق سوريا يعني. فسوريا كان عليها عقوبات وعليها أشياء كثيرة. واليوم الوضع في.
So again, let's take a look at this. Syria's position. Syria was under sanctions and faced many challenges. Today, the situation in Lebanon requires joint solutions, and it's quite possible to rely on Syria to find a safe path to a solution. However, this doesn't mean war, nor does it mean a return to the previous image of a Syrian tutelage over Lebanon under a former regime. Rather, it means restoring support for the Lebanese state. strengthening its institutions, and finding common ground between political parties and influential forces in Lebanon, including Hezbollah, to find a safe solution that everyone believes in. Partial solutions have very serious problems. So again, the issue with this is that as much as I would rather this man be in control of Lebanon temporarily until you have the until you have the Israelis not in control of Lebanon. The issue is he is, the leader of a terrorist organization. And at the same time, what Mario Nawfal said was interesting. He said he actually doesn't support Hezbollah because, he really believes that no other army should have authority over that actual country's army. So again, the Lebanese army should have sovereignty over their own country. And ultimately, it's a question of who is more powerful, I guess. You can debate that. But this is kind of the question. Will Syria rule Lebanon? Will Lebanon get to rule Lebanon? Or will it be Hezbollah who rules Lebanon? Will it be Iran using Hezbollah as a proxy to rule Lebanon? Or will it be the Israelis who are really right now occupying Lebanon? They are pretty much winning, I would say. A lot of people are saying that Hezbollah is winning. And from my take on it, Israel's moving with blitzkrieg. And, when you really look at the military movements of Israel, they're moving fast and they are taking over, And so there does need to be action, and there does need to be a different kind of leadership in there. And there needs to be a different force that's going to push Israel out. The problem is that the Israelis, they control a lot of the Syrian military and a lot of those same subgroups. They're kind of financed by the Mossad. So a lot of people don't know that, maybe not supposed to know that, but ultimately kind of important to pay attention to. So again, this is Netanyahu basically admitting to Mossad operations being done in Lebanon and basically admits to it. So this isn't Brendan Ecker saying this, YouTube. Pay attention. This is Netanyahu.
For years, people told us, you cannot attack the soil of Iran. Yes, you can do Mossad operations, and we did, quite a few. I authorized many. But you cannot
Sorry, I was talking.
Told us, you cannot attack the soil of Iran. Yes, you can do Mossad operations, and we did, quite a few. I authorized many. But you cannot send our military to Iran. But we changed that. We sent our brave pilots over the skies of Iran, and they took out targets, regime targets, terror targets.
So again, that's Netanyahu at the 2026 International Policy Summit, basically admitting to the fact that Mossad operations have been done in Iran for a long time. Right? And again, you're not supposed to say that because apparently that's a conspiracy theory and not factual. But again, this is Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel saying it himself. They told me not to enter Rafah. I entered Rafah. I was told to not strike Hezbollah. We struck Hezbollah. They told me not to confront Iran. We confronted Iran. I will say, when you listen to Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is spoken by a true conqueror. Like him or hate him, historically, Netanyahu is going to go down as a Genghis Khan. And that's what he ultimately is after. They want to have this legacy of power and control. But, that's only if he, that's only if he can secure the election also in October, because right now Netanyahu is facing corruption charges. But again, right now Netanyahu is winning this war, I would say. He is controlling the narrative and the progression of this entire war.
That I shouldn't have taken at the time. They told me not to enter Rafah. I entered Rafah. I was told not to strike Hezbollah. We struck Hezbollah. They told me not to confront Iran. We confronted Iran. And today I want to begin with a simple question. What have we achieved? Because these same people, their cronies in the press, are trying to diminish our achievements. In fact, they're trying to erase them completely.
So again, when you listen to Netanyahu talk and you hear this, you hear, I'm reading like a book. I feel like I'm reading a history book of, again, whether you like him or not, this is the movement of a victor in war. Okay, we have to study the great leaders of history, whether you like them or not. You look at Napoleon, you look at Hitler. This is the way they talked, okay? You look at these different warlords over the years, Genghis Khan, all of these warlords who lived throughout time, They talked like this. I entered Rafah. They told me I wouldn't enter Rafah. I entered Rafah. They told me I wouldn't enter Lebanon. I entered Lebanon. They told me I wouldn't enter Iran, and I entered Iran. We did conduct Mossad operations in Iran. And, it's like this is all spoken in the context of a true warlord. And this is what Trump and Netanyahu are fighting over. They want this power status over the world. This is what they care about. Whether you like it or not, it's just the facts. And so, might be sad for a lot of people, but this is what's happening. Have to be careful about where we're going. So again, we're pretty much going to end this show there. Basically, again, a lot of interesting things going on in the world. Maybe the USA needs another Pearl Harbor 9/11, Israeli news expert says. Again, this is from the Russian media. This was a post on X. We'll end it with this. And look, again, these are, Israelis who are saying this. Maybe USA needs another Pearl Harbor on 9/11 to remember who is the enemy and who is their friend. Good luck for USA to handle Iran regime terrorists. I hope the USA administration to remember who is the enemy and who is the friend. So again, who is really behind all of this? And again, you have this kind of talk. This is from Nadira Ali. She reposted this clip directly from the Knesset of one of the Israeli representatives saying, I am personally proud of the Holocaust of Gaza and that 80 years from now they will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did. The Israeli Minister of Social Equity. This is what she said. So now listen up. Neither you nor your partners who are defending you from home and abroad matter to us one bit. This government doesn't stutter about you. You can keep dreaming that we will end the war without victory. We are not ashamed to say that we want to see the soldiers of the IDF, the holy heroes of ours, catching Sinwar in terrorists and dragging them all across the Gaza Strip on their way to the dungeons. But Ben Gvir's prison, not out of Ben Gvir to a coffin. I am personally proud of the ruins of Gaza, she says, and that every baby, even 80 years from now, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did when their families were murdered and raped and their civilians were kidnapped. You and your friends can dream that we will allow you to build a government, because if you think that the prize is to rape women, beheading, and the kidnapping of civilians will be to sit in a government of change, you are dreaming. You can keep shouting, peace now and elections now. From Kaplan to Gaza, let them hear you. She says, we have a mission, I am concluding, and that the last thing we will allow is for Ofer Kassif to go up to the Temple Mount with a flag of Palestine, or for Sinwar to be the minister of the Palestinian state like his brother Arafat. Not a dove and not an olive branch, only a sword. To cut off Sinwar's head, that's what he will receive from us. That is from, again, the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli Minister of Social Equity. So, you tell me, who is really committing the Holocaust when they admit that they are committing a Holocaust? The Israelis are admitting it. Not all of them. Not all are bad. We understand that. We are not going to target every single people, but this is what most of their people believe. 70 to 80% of Israelis, factually, look it up, support everything that's happened with Gaza, and they support the movements on Lebanon. They support the Greater Israel Project and Pax Judaica. So, with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for this episode. What do you think? Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, support the information, support the show. Ultimately, I think this Iran war is going to continue. I think at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. I think that this war is going to continue on until either Trump basically puts Israel in their place and basically controls the narrative and what is happening, or it is going to be basically Israel controlling the narrative and the forward movement of this entire war. And JD Vance and Trump will continue talking. They'll basically keep saying what they think is going to happen. And then, again, Israel is going to basically take control of the narrative and say what is going to happen. They're basically going to, again, completely take charge. And that's what's going on. So who's going to be the leader and who's going to follow the leader? And Trump and Netanyahu right now are fighting for this kind of control. And right now it seems like Israel is winning. And if you ask me, in my opinion. So, and again, especially with HR 8800, and you look at, again, that HR 8800, section 222 to 224, and then 618 626, I think, something like that. All these different parts and subsections of the National Defense Authorization Act, the fiscal year of 2027, basically integrates the entire Israeli military into the U.S. military. And this bill is going to pass in Congress. It's already passed in the House, and then it's going to be passing in the Senate coming up. So, who's really in control? Who really calls the shots? Is it really America anymore? 250 years of American independence, and to be what? Ruled by Israel? That's my question. Who is going to lead the way? And ultimately, we need to fight back. There needs to be some kind of level of truth. And ultimately, there needs to be some level of real action taken by the United States government. So what do you think about this? What do you think about JD Vance's peace deal with the Iranians? Do you think that this is going to go anywhere? Do you think that there's actually a chance that this peace deal could, proceed? Do you think within the next 60 days we will see some kind of major action? I think we need to stay on our toes. We're going to be following it Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. To come back to the show, watch my shorts every day. I post a short, 1 short to 2 shorts, 3 shorts. Follow me on Instagram, Brendan Ecker Official. You can follow all of the recent news. I basically post the same stuff there. And again, follow me on Rumble. Watch me on Rumble. I'm trying to build a bigger audience on there so I can really move my platform there. YouTube has been it's been tough with YouTube just because there's a lot of very sensitive subjects that we're covering here. And so obviously sometimes we get flagged for that. I'm not trying to violate YouTube's rules, but we do need to talk about these things. These are real geopolitical developments that are rather important. So in my opinion, This is where the war is at. This is what's important in 2026. This is why I do what I do. This is why I am out here making the moves. Follow me on Substack. You can subscribe to that channel. Again, I think I have it set for I don't even remember, $4 a month or something, $5 a month. I don't know. But ultimately, support that. And again, if you want to work with me, you want to grow your business, then I will help you grow your business. Again, you can use our AI software, goldsharkmedia.com. You can use our AI software. You can grow your business. And again, manage it all in one place. Manage your websites, manage everything. Manage your contacts, your leads, CSV files, everything you need. That software is built all for entrepreneurs, built for business owners of all sorts. And then if you want to work with me in Michigan real estate, call me up, BrendanEckerRealty.com. You can visit that website, fill out the booking form, or you can fill out the contact form, and I'll be in contact with you. We'll talk more about your financial situation, your real estate situation, to help you get some clients there. And ultimately, I have nothing else. Stay prudent, stay powerful, and stay wealthy. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.